Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about a moment that, on the surface, only lasted a few seconds, but has ended up being shared, translated, and reacted to in dozens of languages across the internet, because it captures something about Jimin that fans have talked about for years, his instinct to notice the people around him, even in the middle of performing in front of tens of thousands of screaming fans. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe, because we cover moments like this regularly, breaking down not just what happened, but why these small gestures end up meaning so much to the people who witness them. So let's set the stage for what actually happened here. BTS has been in the middle of their massive Arirang World Tour, a run of 85 shows across 34 cities and 23 countries that started back in April and will continue well into next year. This is their first full group tour since all 7 members completed their mandatory military service, which already makes every stop on this run feel emotionally significant for longtime fans who have waited years to see the group performing together again. But within that larger story, it has been the smaller, unscripted moments happening night after night at these shows that keep capturing attention, and this particular one involves Jimin noticing a young fan who was cold, and without hesitating, taking off his own jacket and giving it to her. During the performance, in the middle of a set filled with pyrotechnics, choreography, and the kind of massive production value you would expect from a stadium tour of this scale, Jimin's attention shifted for just a moment to the crowd in front of him. Fans who were there and fans watching footage afterward have described what happened next in strikingly similar terms. He noticed a young girl standing near the barricade, someone who was clearly much smaller than the people around her, and who appeared to be struggling in the cold or in the crush of the crowd pressing in around her. Without making it into a big production, without stopping the show to draw attention to what he was doing, Jimin simply took off his jacket and handed it to her. Videos that circulated afterward show the young fan holding onto that jacket tightly, visibly overwhelmed by what had just happened. Before turning back to continue performing with the rest of the group, Jimin gently patted her on the head, a small, almost instinctive gesture of reassurance, and then went right back into the show as if nothing unusual had occurred. For him, in that moment, it seemed to be a simple act of noticing someone who needed a bit of warmth and doing something about it immediately. For the fan on the receiving end, and for everyone who has watched the footage since, it has become something much bigger than that. I think it is worth pausing here to talk about why a moment like this resonates so strongly, especially with people who are not necessarily deep into K-pop fandom culture. There is something universally understood about the image of someone giving away their own jacket so someone else can be warm. It is one of those gestures that transcends language and cultural context entirely. You do not need to know who BTS is, or understand a single word of Korean, to instantly recognize what is happening in that video and to feel something from it. That is part of why clips like this travel so far beyond the core fanbase, reaching people who have never listened to a BTS song in their life but still find themselves moved by watching it. It is also worth noting that this was not an isolated incident on this particular tour. Throughout the Arirang World Tour, there have been multiple documented moments of Jimin specifically noticing individual fans in the crowd and finding small, personal ways to make their night memorable. During an earlier stop in Munich, he noticed a fan holding up a sign explaining that she had waited 9 years for a moment like this, having traveled from another city just for the chance to see him perform, and he arranged for his jacket to be passed directly to her through security during the performance. At a stop in Boston, he was seen giving his jacket away to an older fan in the crowd, another moment that quickly circulated online and moved a lot of people watching it. And now, this latest moment, involving a young fan who needed warmth, adds another entry to what has become a genuinely consistent pattern throughout this tour. I want to emphasize the word pattern here, because I think it matters. A single act of kindness could always be written off as a one-time coincidence, something that happened to be caught on camera once and went viral because of good timing. But when the same type of behavior shows up again and again, across different cities, different countries, and different specific circumstances, it stops looking like a coincidence and starts looking like something closer to genuine character. Fans who have followed Jimin for years have often pointed to exactly this kind of consistency as one of the things that sets him apart. The fact that these gestures keep happening organically, without any indication that they are being staged or planned in advance for content purposes. Let's talk a little bit about what it actually takes to notice something like this in the first place. If you have ever been to a large stadium concert, you know how overwhelming the environment can be, even just as an audience member. The lights, the sound levels, the sheer size of the crowd, all of it creates a kind of sensory intensity that can make it hard to focus on anything beyond what is directly in front of you. Now imagine being the person on stage, responsible for hitting choreography, projecting vocals to tens of thousands of people, and keeping the energy of an entire show going, all while simultaneously managing the physical and mental demands of performing at that scale. In that environment, noticing one specific person in a massive crowd, someone who is visibly struggling or uncomfortable, and then actually doing something about it in real time, requires a level of awareness that goes beyond what most performers would even attempt in the middle of a set. This is part of why fans often describe these moments using words like genuine or instinctive, rather than performative. There was no indication in any of these instances that security had flagged the fan in advance, or that this was part of a planned segment worked into the choreography. By all accounts from people who were present, these are spontaneous decisions, made in the span of a few seconds, based on something Jimin personally noticed happening in front of him. I also think it is worth talking about the emotional impact this has specifically on the fans who are on the receiving end of these gestures. For someone attending a concert like this, especially a young fan, the experience of an artist they admire from a distance suddenly stepping into their personal space, acknowledging them directly, and giving them something as personal as the jacket off their own back, is the kind of moment that can genuinely stay with a person for years. It is not just about receiving an item of clothing. It is about being seen, in a very literal sense, in a crowd of tens of thousands of people, by someone whose attention in that moment felt entirely genuine and entirely focused on them. There is also something worth noting about the broader context of this specific tour and what it represents for BTS as a group. After years of individual military service that separated the members and put the group's activities on pause, this tour has been widely described, both by fans and by media covering it, as a genuine comeback in every sense of the word. For a group that built its entire identity around a close, direct relationship with its fanbase, moments like this jacket exchange fit into a much larger narrative about picking back up right where they left off, continuing the same kind of personal, attentive connection with fans that helped build this level of devotion in the first place. I want to take a moment to address something that sometimes comes up in comment sections when stories like this circulate, which is a bit of skepticism about whether moments like this are genuinely spontaneous or whether they are, in some way, planned out in advance for the sake of generating exactly this kind of viral reaction. I think it is fair to approach any story like this with a healthy amount of critical thinking. But when you look at the pattern across this specific tour, different cities, different fans, different specific circumstances, each one captured independently by different fan cameras from different angles in the crowd, it becomes much harder to argue that these are coordinated publicity moments rather than genuine, in-the-moment decisions. If these were staged, you would expect a level of consistency in framing or setup that simply is not present here. Instead, what you see across each of these clips is exactly what spontaneous behavior tends to look like, slightly different every time, dependent entirely on what Jimin happened to notice in the crowd on any given night. Let's also talk about what this specific moment says on a broader level about the culture that exists within BTS as a group, and specifically the standard that Jimin himself seems to consistently hold for how he interacts with fans. This is not the first tour where stories like this have circulated, and it likely will not be the last. Over the years, there have been numerous documented instances of similar gestures, whether it is noticing a fan in distress, acknowledging someone's handmade sign, or simply taking a moment mid-show to make direct, personal contact with someone in the crowd rather than treating the audience as an anonymous mass of people. When you compile enough of these individual moments together, a clearer picture starts to emerge, not of a performer following a script designed to maximize positive press, but of someone who seems to genuinely default to noticing and responding to the people directly in front of him, even under the immense pressure and physical demands of performing at stadium scale. I also think there is something worth saying about how quickly these moments spread once they are captured. In the past, a small, personal gesture like this, happening for a few seconds in the middle of a massive concert, might have been witnessed only by the small handful of people standing close enough to see it clearly. Now, with so many fans recording concert footage on their phones from multiple angles throughout the venue, moments like this get captured, uploaded, and shared within minutes of happening. That immediacy is part of why stories like this travel as far and as fast as they do. Within hours of a moment like this occurring, it can already be circulating with subtitles in a dozen different languages, being watched and reacted to by people on the complete opposite side of the world who were nowhere near the actual concert. It is also worth reflecting on how something this small can end up carrying so much weight. In the grand scheme of an 85-show world tour, spanning dozens of countries, a single jacket handed to one fan in one city is objectively a tiny moment. And yet it is often these tiny, unscripted moments, rather than the massive, expensive production numbers, that end up being what people remember most and talk about the longest afterward. There is something genuinely human about that. Audiences, whether they are lifelong fans or people encountering this story for the first time through a viral clip, tend to connect far more strongly with a moment of authentic kindness than with even the most impressively choreographed performance segment. I think part of what makes this specific moment stand out, even among the other jacket-giving incidents from this same tour, is the specific detail of it being tied to the fan being cold. There is something particularly striking about someone giving up their own comfort, quite literally the warmth of their own jacket, in real time, in the middle of performing, without any hesitation or visible deliberation. It reframes the gesture from simply being a generous gift into something closer to an act of genuine care, prioritizing someone else's basic comfort over his own, even for just the remainder of that performance. Before I wrap up, I want to hear directly from you. When you first saw this clip, or when you first heard about this moment, what was your reaction? Does this feel consistent with what you already knew about Jimin, or did it still manage to catch you off guard? Let me know in the comments below. I read through them regularly and I love hearing different perspectives on moments like this. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who would enjoy content like this. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is a great time to join, because we cover moments from this tour and from BTS more broadly on a regular basis, especially during a run as eventful as this current world tour has already turned out to be. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves, and I will catch you next time.